And now I'm going to turn to Senator Durbin for his round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this hearing. About 10 years ago, the NBC television station in Chicago received a complaint from a woman who said she was traveling routinely through Chicago O'Hare, was stopped and strip searched, and she thought it was outrageous. She was African American. The story ran on the air, and as a result of that story, a number of other African American women who had gone through the same experience called the station. The woman who handled the story decided to make a plea that all of the African American women who had been strip searched at Chicago O'Hare should contact the station. And it ended up with, I think, close to 20 when it was over. It turned out that they had established a practice at Chicago O'Hare that if you were an African American coming from certain countries, in this case the Caribbean, that they were going to stop more of them, detain them, and search them. Clearly this was a case of profiling, and the complaint was made and investigation initiated. GAO investigation found there was a clear pattern of profiling against African American women. And you can understand the personal outrage of these women who were traveling, they thought, under innocent circumstances, who were being singled out. As a result of it, Ray Kelly, who was then head of the operations there, announced that that would end. And I commended him for doing the right thing. Now I'm hearing complaints from particularly my Pakistani American friends, but others, Arab and Muslim friends, that they are being singled out. And some of them, with great embarrassment, men and women, are being stopped, not for strip search, but for lengthy interrogation and for searching of their belongings. Many of them are reputable business people who've been involved and associated or established in the Chicagoland community for 10, 20 years, who have businesses with many employees. And travel has become an opportunity for harassment. And I think I understand the line of this questioning when it relates to laptops, but I also want to go to the larger issue of profiling and whether or not I can elicit some comments from you relative to that. Ms. Khera, does the DHS policy allow for Arab and Muslim Americans to be singled out for scrutiny on the basis of their national origin or religion?
Senator Durbin, you raise an excellent question, and let me also first say that I just thank you for your leadership on this issue. I know back 10 years ago when these issues arose involving the U.S. Customs Service, you led the fight here in Congress in trying to hold the U.S. Customs Service, the predecessor to the CBP, accountable at that time. So thank you for your continued interest in these issues. We believe that the current DHS guidance on this issue is not sufficient, that it does allow basically an escape hatch at the borders for DHS to use race, ethnicity. And what we heard this morning, and I was actually very pleased to hear, is that there seems to be unanimity on this panel that singling Americans out based on their faith, ethnicity, is wrong, and it's impermissible. I think two things. One is, I think it behooves Congress to make it clear that that's the case, because clearly lessons were not learned from the experience of 10 years ago, and I think we do need some very direct authority on this. And I know Senator Feingold has a bill on this issue, the End Racial Profiling Act. You've been also a strong supporter of that, and I think it behooves Congress to move on that legislation. I think the second issue that this raises is, even if in policy folks can agree that people should not be targeted, what's happening in practice? And are CBP agents receiving the kind of training they need and the proper guidance to ensure that they're not targeting people and not asking inappropriate questions? And finally, I would encourage Congress to conduct oversight, to be demanding of CBP the policy and guidance that's being given to these agents, as well as having CBP provide Congress with information about the basis for why people are being subjected to secondary inspection, the kinds of questions that are being asked, and items that are seized, and if information is being seized, how it's being used, how it's being stored and shared.
In this age of concern about security and terrorism, is it possible or even realistic to say that when it comes to these border situations, that our government cannot use race, religion, or ethnic background as the basis for search or questioning?
Okay. I think it's absolutely necessary for our government to be clear that we're not targeting people based on those factors. I think those factors can be used in combination with other factors indicating some kind of criminal activity. So if there's, for example, a specific description of a suspect, a criminal suspect, or a specific terrorist who might be crossing the border, those factors can then be used. But as a general matter, it's not smart border policy. It's not fair as a matter of the Constitution, and it's not effective. Because with the limited scarce resources, as even my colleague, Mr. Farhana pointed out, CBP has scarce resources, and we need to be sure that that the CBP agents are using those scarce resources in an effective way and not targeting the family man who's returning home from a business trip to Japan with very invasive, intensive scrutiny. Because for every minute that is spent on targeting him, it's 1 minute less that CBP could be focusing on actual wrongdoers.
Almost 4 years ago to the day, I asked then DHS Secretary Tom Ridge in this committee room about the special registration program, and he said at the time that he was going to modify or eliminate the program. Well, that hasn't happened in the 4 years since. I just asked this kind of general question to all the witnesses. Mr. Carafano, you testified that, quote, in order to be successful, CBP must avoid predictable patterns of behavior. This is the fundamental problem I see with profiling based on race, national origin, religion. It's predictable, and terrorists and others seeking to do us harm can evade the profile once they learn about it. So does there anyone here disagrees with the premise that profiling on the basis of race, national origin, or religion may actually be counterproductive? Is there anyone disagrees with that concept? Remarkable unanimity. Appreciate that very much.
I could reflect that no one disagreed.
I'd like to ask, is profiling worse at some airports in America than others? The testimony we received today mentioned several incidents at San Francisco Airport, and I wonder, obviously, if there have been any incidents at O'Hare or other airports that seem to be notorious when it comes to this situation.
Senator, the complaints that we've received and other civil rights organizations have received have come from a number of different airports and land crossings. So it includes San Francisco, Seattle, Newark, Houston, Boston, as well as land crossings in Detroit and the Washington State Canadian border. So it's been a variety of different locations.
Okay, so it's not one particular airport, it's many. Yeah. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Durbin. I'll begin another round. Professor Swire, DHS's written testimony asserts that CPB border searches